Welcome to the RAN 3D Webcast Creo 4.0 updates. Hi, my name is Natasha Reeves. I am a full-time employee with RAN 3D, where I've worked for 17 years. I'm a senior technical engineer and I hold a bachelor's and a master's degree from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. There have been a lot of changes to Creo 4.0. Some are subtle and some not so subtle. I think that most are welcome changes, so let's dive right into them. We're going to start with the user interface. There have been some enhancements to the Creo 4.0 interface. If you're coming from Creo 2.0 or Creo 3.0, the environment is set up very similar to what you're used to. You have the access toolbar, ribbon style environment, the navigator there on the left, still editable. You've got your main graphics window, in-graphics toolbar, status bar down at the bottom of the screen, traditional buttons you're used to seeing, selection filter in the lower right-hand corner of the interface, command search in the upper right-hand corner of the interface, as well as some other tools. Basically the same setup that you perhaps are used to. There have been some updates to how the coordinate system is displayed. There on the left, you can see the legacy image of a coordinate system versus on the right, the Creo 4.0 image of a coordinate system. You can see it very clearly when you're looking at a model with the coordinate system in a template or created in addition to that. The X, Y, and Z axes are more clearly identifiable. You can easily get from one window to the other by selection very nicely, and the windows will activate. You still got the Windows macro, and you're still able to maneuver through all files that are launched into a window in that fashion, but you do have the ability to activate the windows by selecting them without having to manually activate them in the traditional other way. There is a full screen tool that will allow you to access full screen mode. You can access the tool itself. There's a macro in the lower left-hand corner of the interface, or you can use the F11 key from your keyboard. I'm going to go back into my environment here, where you can look at the bottom left-hand corner of the interface. There is the full screen mode tool. Let's click that on there, and you'll notice the image of full screen mode, the models in larger focus. That main graphics window is what you see in addition to the in-graphics toolbar. If you require it, you can still display the model tree or the ribbon or even the message area by selecting within the area where these sections are traditionally located. You can see me push my cursor over to the right, rather the left side of my screen there, and you can see the model tree image show. I'll bring the cursor down towards the bottom area here, and you'll notice the status bar. And let's now bring our cursor up to the upper middle area of the interface there. You can see the ribbon does expand down. Get all this while I'm in full screen mode. Does allow me to still work as I traditionally would, but without having the hindrance of those other sections of the interface. I can exit out of full screen mode by either selecting the same tool, however you like, the button or the F11 key again, will bring you back into the traditional visual representation of the interface. You also have tools from the Render tab that are located in specific areas. The Render tab itself has been removed. The tools have not been removed. They've been relocated to other tabs, like the View tab, for example. There is a View dialog box, which actually merges the functionality from the old legacy versions orientation box and perspective dialog box. All that information is accessible from a new interface, the View dialog box, which you can get to from the in-graphics toolbar by selecting the saved orientations macro, and from there the reorient option. You have also a view normal tool that allows you to reorient your model normal to a selected reference. You can get to this tool as well, view normal, from the saved orientations menu. You have an appearance states that is a new tab within the view manager for parts that will allow you to quickly change between variations of color or textures. And this can be combined in with other aspects of the view manager to create a combination state as well. You can use the hide and show commands as you could before, but a little bit more consistently through the model tree, you can access this functionality. You have an auto locate in tree functionality that can be activated or not, depending upon how you want to use it. You can access it from the navigator through the show tool. It's a checkbox option. You can, with that option on, highlight models in the tree that have been selected within your main graphics window. It makes it easier to identify geometry within your model. As you go through and make selections of certain entities like edges and surfaces, for example, there is a mini toolbar that will be displayed. It will contain some common operations that can be applied to your selected entities. So it is context sensitive. So depending upon where you select, the tools that can be applied to what's been selected will appear in this mini toolbar. And it will appear a lot of times in conjunction with your contextual menu. So I'll make a selection of one of the whole features here in the model. And you can see, of course, it light up by name in the tree, by green in the graphics window where it's located in the model. And of course, there's now a mini toolbar that appears as well, where I can get to a lot of common functionality as well as certain edit actions commonly accessed as well. You can brush your cursor, like always, across any of these tools and get a description of the functionality. There are some tools that you are familiar with, and there are some new to Creo 4.0 tools in that particular menu that we'll discuss momentarily. As far as the selection filter, you no longer have that smart option that you could have customized out of Creo 3.0, for example. But in Creo 4.0, the smart filter option has been replaced by the geometry option, where you can select any type of geometry, like an edge or a surface or datums, as you see, curve, quilt, which is another way of saying surface feature, and annotations. As before, if you'd like to deactivate the filter, you can still hold the Alt key to do just that, as in legacy versions of the software. But with this new selection filter, it makes it easier to select items. I'll go over here to the selection filter and I'll select surface, for example. And as I brush my cursor across various areas within the model, you can see the highlight of the specified element, or i.e. the surface. And if you wait long enough, you can see a little label that names that particular boundary representation as well. Of course, you can make selections as well as multiple selections. I'll pick two surfaces, for example, and you still will see them light up graphically within the model with the green highlight, by name with the blue block within the model tree. You can also see the mini toolbar appear, where I can perform various operations from the common tools that are accessible from that toolbar. Of course, you can still go to your ribbon to access operations that may not appear within the toolbar, but without having to go across the screens so dramatically, you've got a quicker access to some of your tools. I'll come back over here to the selection filter and go to the edge filter option, and then brush my cursor around various geometry within the model. And again, you can see specific edge references highlight based off of what I happen to be hovering over at that moment. And again, you can make multiple selections, and depending upon the actual feature where these boundary reps come from, you can see the name of the features themselves highlight in the model tree, and of course the entities that you selected do show selected in the main graphics window, along with the mini toolbar that you can use to access certain operations. From there, we're going to talk about the couple of options that perhaps you saw when I was in the mini toolbar. There's a select from parents option. This particular command will allow you to access the parent objects from the geometry that you selected, right there from the launch dialog box that appears once you select the tool. There's also the zoom to selected option, which is going to allow you to zoom in quickly on the specific selected geometry. And you do have these tools in other environments. We are in part mode now, but as you can see there, you do have this functionality accessible in the assembly mode as well. You will have the ability to select in conjunction with the selection filter, the 2D box selection. This particular way of selection does allow you to access elements from the graphics window a lot more quickly, especially again if you filter to the type of entities that you'd like to select. This particular box can be dragged from left to right or from right to left, which is what they actually show in this image. And based off of what you filtered as a selected entity, items of that type will populate on your screen through the color green or the selected color. So just kind of going here in a similar image, I'll leave that on edge, for example, and I'll just click somewhere and then move my mouse and then let go of my left mouse button as I just did. And then the edges, of course, that are within that box do light up selected there on the screen. And of course, depending upon what you like to do, you can perform various actions. I just held down my right mouse button so that you can see the contextual menu as well as the mini toolbar, which allows me to perform various actions like round, for example, if that's what you would like to do. From there, we will get into your themes. You do have specific themes or color schemes unique to Creo 4.0. The software comes with these 3 predefined themes as you see named. There's the default theme that has the gray color scheme to it. If you'd like to go back to the Creo 3.0 color scheme without having to reconfigure your system's colors file option, you could go to the light theme option from the list and get back to that Creo 3.0 color scheme. There's also a dark theme that some may prefer, where you get a dark gray theme with a black background, which again, you might recall from older versions of the software. You're still able to set, perhaps if you have an old systems colors file, SCL extension file that you would prefer to use, you're still able to set those as you have been able to do in the past with other legacy versions of the software. There are some enhancements to your keyboard shortcuts, the ability to access some more standard keyboard shortcuts like edit definition, for example, controlling E keys. You'll find quite handy in Creo 4.0. You can customize your keyboard keys if you like, and you can still create your own keyboard keys or Mac keys and add them to your environmental config.profile. You're still able to customize the ribbon, but you're able to define your customization by environment or mode if you like. There's some options that you can set very easily through the customize ribbon portion of the Creo Parametric Options dialog box. As with before, if you happen to make changes and you want to go back to perhaps what you had before, there's a reset option here that allows you to quickly go back to some other configuration for the ribbon if what you set you like to get away from. And if you like to customize the shortcut menus, again, the software does support that, and if necessary, allows you to reset to a standard if you prefer to go there as well. In the part mode environment, you've got several new enhancements to include when it comes to your depth options, say for an extruded form. You're able to access the depth options for the second side through the contextual menu. You don't have to go through the options panel of the creation interface to access the second side limit options. You can do it graphically through the contextual menu. You also have, in the case of removing material, the two sides through all enhanced option that will allow you to remove material in both directions from your sketch through all assignment very quickly. You don't have to set both side one, side two. You do it through that one option. You can also specify a negative direction value for one side of your base form, extrude or revolve, and the resulting geometry will be all on one side of the sketch. You have some new depth options. When you assign to selected, there's a little drop down area where you can specify offset, which brings up a value field, or transform options. When it comes to the thick option, you have an enhancement to the thicken command where you can cap the ends of a thickened feature, which allows for more flexibility in your design. The Datum plane feature has gone through an enhancement as well. There is a mid-plane option that can be used when creating a reference parallel to another, and also in a direction of one or more other references, which are considered bisectors. Let me bring up a model where we can see something to that effect. When we look at this particular model, I'll start the process of creating a plane. Let me actually hide that one through the mini toolbar here. We'll go to hide and start the process of making a datum plane off of this first face. Notice the face showing selected, both by name in the datum plane creation box and by graphic representation. We get the initial constraint assignment, which if we go into the drop-down list, we now have a mid-plane option that we can select. And from there, I will select another reference like this edge. And when I do select that edge, you'll notice that I have in the drop-down field two options. Bisector 1 assign gives me the current setup for that plane as you see it. And we'll go to bisector 2, which gives me another variation using the same references but a different assignment. When I have the assignment the way I like, I can go with OK, and that will create the feature. All right, so you got that new flexibility there with the datum plane. Of course, the other tabs contain the same information as you've seen it before, display and properties. This enhancement deals with placement. Speaking of placement, when it comes to placement of a whole feature, you can create a hole on a point without having to define that point on a surface. So the point can be defined with other constraint options. And you can also place a hole with an axis that's not normal to a surface. So that gives you more flexibility with the hole creation. There's also a small checkbox option called top clearance that you can get to from the shape panel of the hole's definition. You use this when the diameter of the hole that you create cuts through solid structure. And depending upon whether or not the top clearance option is turned on or off, you're going to see the entire hole, or the hole may be blocked by the current model geometry. So in the image here shows a hole where the top clearance option is enabled, and of course you get your hole output. With that top clearance option, same model, turned off or disabled, you can see that the model geometry comes into the whole feature. So that's a little small checkbox option that you can get into when you're defining a hole for that purpose. And if you prefer not having to go through the feature and editing its definition or defining it appropriate to how you'd like the feature to be, you can actually automate that entire process using this new config.pro option, default hole top clearance, where you can set that to one way or the other, yes or no, or have it automatically assigned. You also have an enhancement to the draft feature. With the draft feature, you have a new option, exclude areas with draft, that will exclude areas with the draft that prior to this functionality may result in a regeneration issue with the draft creation based on pull direction and neutral element options that you might have defined. This option, again, exclude areas with draft, is a small checkbox option. It can be turned on and off in that fashion, located underneath the options panel, along with the other two from legacy versions of the software, draft tangent surfaces and extend intersect surfaces. So you get this added checkbox option there that will allow you some variation in how your draft is defined. You also have some enhancements to your groups. You can use the drag and drop functionality to move features in and out of groups. This will allow that process to be a lot more easy to deal with. You have also an insert here arrow, insert mode functionality that can be used in the group when you right click. So you can right click and access insert here, or you can just drag, and that will bring up the ability to relocate the geometry within the group. And this is important because in the past, changes in the model where you might need to restructure certain features within a group would lend towards failure or would be incomplete based on specific reasons. Now you can work with them and be able to maneuver in and out of the group without automatic failure by doing so. You also have some enhancements to the accuracy. You can go into the operations group from the model tab and access scale model option. That's going to launch the scale model dialog box where you've got this new scale absolute accuracy checkbox option that you can use to control if the accuracy is scaled or not. And you've got these options, these configuration options. If the scale absolute accuracy option is not turned on as the image shows here, the check is not shown in the box, you can establish the new configuration options, modify absolute accuracy on convert or modify absolute accuracy on interpret, so that you can specify when the model units themselves are going to be manipulated through the scaling process. In the Sketcher environment, you do have this new to us functionality that allows you to clip the model. This can be very handy and perhaps is worth seeing. Let me go into another model here where we can work with a sketch-based feature. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create a sketch on this face here. Let's more importantly go into an extruded feature, a sketch-based feature, using that particular face. So you can see based on this view here that some of the model geometry is blocking my sketch plane. But in the In-Graphics toolbar, you can access the clip model tool here, which will clip the model based on the position of the sketch plane, of course. And that allows you to view the sketch plane a little bit more cleanly. Let me click on this sketch view button here to line me back up into the 2D view. And of course, that button is not new, but it can work in conjunction with the clip model. And if necessary, even, you can go into sketch setup and reorient your environment to get it precisely the way perhaps you want the image to appear. So I'm going to go here and say left, for example, and sketch. And again, I've got the model clipped. So when I draw my shape, we won't do anything overtly fancy, just a nice rectangle here. You can see that structure a lot more cleanly than before when the model geometry was in the way. All right, so depending upon how you want to work within the Sketcher environment, you have that new clip model tool that can make life a little bit more easy for you. And while we're here in Sketcher, by the way, let me bring up another enhancement. You do have the 2D box selection functionality as well in the Sketcher environment, where you can create a box by clicking left to right or right to left in order to select entities within the box for some operation you'd like to perform on them while you're in Sketcher, which is very nice. You probably noticed as well that the shortcut menus have been updated in this environment as well. So you'll get, depending upon what you are selecting, a contextual menu manager as well as a mini toolbar containing operations that you can apply on what you've selected. So uh, from there, you can access these a lot more quickly, or of course, you can still get to them directly from the ribbon if you prefer to go in the traditional way. You do have the ability to change the thickness of your sketch entities uh, to make it a little bit easier to see. In some cases, perhaps you prefer to see a bolder representation of the sketch lines. So if you like to do that, for example, you can go into the uh, File Options environment when the Creo Parametric Options box launches. Look for the Sketcher category, and then from there, you may have to scroll. You should be able to access the line thicknesses area where there's a line thickness value collector where you can specify the line thickness. Of course, if you prefer, you can automate that globally with the config.pro option listed in that note menu. But let me just change this value to something a little dramatic just to prove a point. And then from there, accept the new configuration. And then you can see the thickness did increase there for that profile. So if necessary, you can perform those actions according to how you like to see the lines within Sketcher, or the geometry, I should say, more so than lines within Sketcher. Also, you will notice that Creo will dynamically snap your sketch entities while you're making them, where you bring elements of that sketch entity close to the model geometry. So while you're sketching, the software can automatically add a reference that you're near as a sketcher reference, which can be very handy based off of how you want to set things up. It could be a lot quicker to generate your sketch. So let's say, for example, I was creating a line. I'll start here on the right side and move my cursor over here towards my model. You can actually see this highlight of the vertical side of the model there and the little alignment icon that's popping up in the meantime. Of course, if I pass that, then it goes away. But if I stick there with the final creation, you can actually see the dashed lines there appearing to represent my references. I'm going to come out of that particular feature and just hover over the line there, and you can see that it's a sketch reference without me having to go into the references tool there from the setup group and outright mark a reference and then come in and start sketching structure in order to snap to it. I could, as I'm creating the geometry, have that snap happen while I'm in the process of creating, which can be very handy if you find that that benefits you. It's there now. Let me delete this piece of line segment right here and go back to our information because there's quite a bit. You probably noticed while I was in the process of sketching that last line that some alignment guides popped up or appeared as I sketched. That's that set of dotted lines that act as a guide whenever an alignment constraint can be assigned. That can also help in your process of creating your sketch. Also, you can see from this image, and you probably noticed when I had my environment up, that the constraints appear more pronounced now. There are these green blocks that appear around the constraints. They're a lot more visible. Of course, you still have the ability to hide them in the same way, but they show differently now, more pronounced. And of course, the color of the profile, you probably noticed that that's a little different as well, which is also nice. Of course, that's the closed color. If you've got an open profile there, that could be something entirely different. That's going to still show. Let's just make a line feature here. And you can see that there's still that pronounced aspect of an open element with the red squares. So that's okay. But the color scheme of the closed profile, which again, you can turn either of these on or off. But if you leave them on, it makes and they're under the inspect geometry group once again. But if you leave those inspect tools on, both the shade closed loops there and the highlight open ends, it just makes the visual analysis of your sketch a lot easier to detect if you need it. Let me go back and delete this extra line again in case we need the sketch one more time. From there, there is the enhancement to the sketch text tool, which again, we do need this sketch, don't we? You can see this text function tool or option right there in the sketching group on the sketch tab. The enhancement happens to be within the dialog box. You can see there that the use parameter options there do allow you to set font individually, as you see. And there is also a macro that will launch out the text symbol palette so that you can add symbols to your text. There's some enhancements to how you space the text as well through definition, and that avoids you having to come out of the box and use the traditional method of changing your spacing with dimensions, for example. You can do it while you're creating the text now within the text dialog box. Enhancements to the assembly environment. There's a few. We start off by mentioning that the traffic light that represented the Regeneration Manager from the past, that's missing. You can see an image example of the old version Regeneration status tool from legacy versions of the software. But now you have a regenerate icon that shows in its place, which makes more sense. You can use it the same way we did before, just the icon is different. The notifications tool, that icon that looks like a flag, that particular tool is not new, but there are some enhancements to the notification types. So when you do click on that button, it still launches up a information window which has an open notification center tool that you can click on and launches out a separate dialog box. And when you do look at the Creo 4 version of this notification center dialog box, you can expand out the list of objects and hover over them specifically. Where there are issues, there's a description of the issues that will appear in a flyout box, which is very nice because it will contain verbiage or information that lends towards, in some cases, helping you fix the problem. Including certain words like use, edit, definition even. So you still have the ability to see with the red tint models within or features within your tree that are failing to regenerate. And if you would like, you can access the notification center directly through the tree by holding down your right mouse button. There's a notification center option that's been enhanced to the contextual menu. You can customize the notifications through the Creo Parametric options box if you prefer to do that as well. There's also the information as we're going to show it here relating to simplified representations. Legacy representations are obsolete and have now in Creo 4 been replaced with a single automatic representation. You have visually shown here on the left a View Manager dialog box from an older version of the software, and there on the right you can see the View Manager dialog box from Creo 4.0. Definitely the statuses that you can assign have been streamlined, and if you would like, you can actually hide all the simplified reps that were created in legacy versions of the software through configuration. There's a config.pro option, hide pre-Creo 4 reps, that as you can see there, you can set with one of those desired 3 options. Yes, no, maintain master. So if you want to do nothing and just kind of transfer all of your reps from older versions of software into Creo 4, you just set that option to no. And it's as it was before. You don't lose anything. But you've got options now if you prefer to go another route. There's obviously an enhancement here to the mirror component dialog box. You can create a new model. You enter in a different name, of course, through the dialog box. You could also reuse a model, selecting it by name. There is a little small checkbox option here under symmetry analysis, perform symmetry analysis. That option is used to check for reuse of symmetric components. You do have an enhancement to your merge and cutout operations from previous versions of the software. The commands are now merged into the Boolean Operations tool. So when you access the Boolean Operations dialog box, in the same way that you got to merge and cut out from old versions of the software, you, when getting the Boolean Operations dialog box, can select from the drop-down list across the top either merge, cut, or intersect. So you can access the desired option, and from there you can specify the models that you're working on under the section modified models, and then the actual objects that you are operating with, the models that are merging, for example, you would activate them or select them in the section modifying components. So you're going to be able to perform the same operations as merge and cutout, but they're no longer two separate commands. They're merged into one command. It's the same functionality, and either way, you still get the single external merge feature or cutout feature, depending on which operation you're doing, of course. So you do have that streamlined variation of the option. You do have more control over the resulting merge or output cut. For example, in the update control area here, you've got some choices. Automatic update allows for any changes that you make to be reflected right away. Manual update obviously requires that you click regenerate, and there is the option of not having dependency between the source files and the resulting output from the operation. So once you get this single modified structure, depending upon your settings and such, you do have more flexibility in how you want to treat the resulting feature. There's been some updates to flexible component functionality. You can get to the define variable items dialog box a lot more quickly. There's a define variation items command that you can get to through right mouse selection, meaning holding down your right mouse button. You go to the flexible option, make flexible option that is located in the contextual menu. One of the expanded menu options is define vary items, which is define variable items. That will launch out the same variable items dialog box that you had when you made the model flexible, but without having to pass through the model specifically through edit definition, for example, and get to that functionality as you had to do in the past. This is a lot faster to get to. And also you can apply different materials to instances that are created through flexibility using the vary items dialog box. So that's an enhancement to the interface as well. Now, as far as materials go, though, you can actually access materials by right mouse contextual menu. You can hold down your right mouse button on a model, and there's an edit materials option that will launch out the materials dialog box, which in the past you had to go through file prepare model properties, for example, through the 3D model to get to. Now the interface does look a little different. We are talking Creo 4.0 here. So you can double click on the material to add it to the model. There's no longer that set arrow that you have to go through. Or you can double click in order to specify which material you want to assign, and then right click and there's an assign option through the contextual menu. And you do have some model properties themselves that are displayed in the dialog box, and in some cases, depending upon how your company environment is set up, if it's editable, you'll be able to make changes. You can use the model tree as well to assign material. So if you've got various materials, of course, they'll be identified through the model tree. There's a material section that will appear and can be expanded. The current material sign shows an arrow pointing towards its name. If you'd like to assign a different one, you would select it and hold down your right mouse button. There's an assign option that appears in the contextual menu, as well as edit definition, delete, and information if you'd like to launch out a separate box showing information about that material. In the assembly environment, reference backups that are not required can be removed through contextual menu. So that means you can select a model or even a feature and then hold down your right mouse button. There'll be a references option within the contextual menu, and from there you got a couple of options that you can access depending upon what's active. But remove backup if you're talking about removing a reference backup. And if you notice, you're doing this locally. So you're inside of the assembly, selecting a component, for example, and then holding down your right mouse button and saying references. If you would rather this be a global change, then you would go to the operations group where references is located, and from there you can set your desired setting. The text dialog box from the parameters environment is enhanced. You can get to parameters from model intent. That group is located on the model tab and the tools tab, so you can get to that pretty easily. Or command search parameter if you prefer to go that route. Once the parameters dialog box appears, you can select a restricted parameter value, and if it's restricted, it's going to show a check in the restricted column for that particular parameter. And from there, you can define properties for the parameter if required. You can do that very easily. Now, drawing enhancements. There's quite a bit of these as well. Let's get right into them. Datum targets and geometric tolerance annotations have now built-in syntax checking. So you're in compliance with ASME and ISO GD&T standards. When it comes to the datum feature symbols, you can enter a value for the datum label, and that doesn't comply with standards and get a notification. You'll get an information block that pops up telling you so. So in order to comply with the standards, the label has to be either 1 or 2 uppercase letters, for example. And if you put in something that's not permitted, you're given a warning. These are some images of certain warnings that come up. Previously, you saw the datum targets, and these are geometric tolerance warnings here. And when it comes to your geometric tolerance annotations, if the text or the symbols that are entered in the value or datum references field aren't meeting standards, of course you get the issue highlighted on the tab itself with the little notification block appropriate, and then you can fix your issue. When it comes to placement, you're able to drag your annotations here using your middle drag, left click drag, for example, and you press the middle mouse button to place. When it comes to changing references, you can do that through contextual menu, which is really nice. You don't have to go straight back into the edit definition of the datum feature. You can go straight to contextual menu. As far as automatic naming goes here, when you create a datum feature symbol, the next available name in the standard sequence gets automatically assigned. You can still manually enter in a label using that field, the name field from the datum feature tab. But if there's any missing label in the sequence, the next datum created will have the missing label. So you got to be conscious of that aspect. You can include additional text with a datum feature symbol. There's an additional text field that allows for that process. You can see there's a button there to add an elbow to a datum feature symbol, and you can adjust the length using, as you see, the shift key. There's some enhancements to your datum targets. If you create a datum target, which is a tool from the Annotate tab, for example, all of them are, In the past, you had to set the datum in the model or in the drawing before creating the datum target, but now you can uh, see a preview of the target and place the target selecting references, middle mouse button to place like with dimensions, without having to go through the longer process. And if again necessary, you can change the references through the change reference option we spoke of before that you can get to through contextual menu. If you uh, would like or need to, you can type the datum reference letter and number in the datum reference field as you set up your datum targets. And there are intelligent target areas. You can choose the type of target area using what's called the target area option. And you can get to that from the ribbon. As you see, there's a big macro for it, which has specific items like circle and point, rectangle options that may require some parameters to control the shape. But outside of that, you can set these up very easily. You do have enhancements to your GTOL, your geometric tolerances. You can see there that you can type datum names or select them from the drawings. You could type in the values and add modifiers right through the definition box. There's a palette that you can get to as well. You can create composite tolerance frames. You can use indicators to add indicators to your geometric tolerance that's in compliance with standards. You can set the origin for angular dimensions through configuration if you like. And as far as dimension text go, there's a text symbol palette available now with the process for adding that to your dimension text. And you do have the ability to change the orientation a lot more cleanly through right click. You don't have to go through that menu as with the past versions of the software. And you can prevent the modification of driving dimension values when the dimension precision is edited using this configuration option, modify driving dim by precision. You can import images into your drawing without going through object linking and embedding. A lot more like in other Word environments, for example, or I should say Microsoft environments. I was thinking specifically of a Word document. Done that before where I had to import the image in that way, but now you don't have to do that. And you've got a replace dialog box, long time coming here, which will allow you to replace a model in a drawing view with a related model. You got a family table member or a simplified rep or some reference model that you prefer to use in that drawing view. You can easily swap that out using this replace box. Creo supports that nonlinear hatch pattern file that's created through the pattern image file format. And you can download more information about that, of course. There's 2 new fonts that are included as well. And you can use the detail option here, symbol font, to set your font depending on what font style you'd like. Got some options there. With the sheet metal environment, you do have some enhancements. Maybe a long time coming here. Finally, the twisted wall option is based off of a dashboard now. You can use a ribbon. In the past versions, it's been a dialog box. You still need the same information to set up a twist wall, but you can use the use in edge, trim, or extend options. That's an enhancement as well. You can allow width modification, and you've got a center width option that can be used with a datum point. And with the punch and die features, you've got the dependency options that are similar to the merge and inheritance features, where you've got that button that you can press, where you can copy in the source features after the operation is performed, so that it's easier to edit. And you can see here in the shape panel You've got the ability to set automatic update or manual update or no dependency if you prefer that. With the edge bin, you do have some enhancements with that particular feature as well. You can see there that reliefs can be added to edge bin features. You will have the same relief options that you see with others. Of course, no, and rip, stretch, rectangular, and up round. So you didn't lose any functionality in that score. Just the ability to add it in and of itself is enough of as an enhancement. That's been a long time coming. You do have this closed corner option with the flange that whenever you have multiple flanges connected, you can use this closed corner option. As you can see from the image here, located in the edge treatment menu, if you like. Notice here that it's only applicable when the open edge treatment option is set. With the edge treatment of edge rip, if you set the edge rip feature from or the element from the conversion feature there, you can get the corner to close as well. Notice that that's a long time coming as well. Also, when using a flat pattern and you have a form feature or form features, the entire forms can be flattened. There is a little checkbox option within the flat pattern panel, flatten forms there, and if you check it, you will be able to flatten all form features in your model, and if you don't check it, then the area stays in its form state. So you do have some options there, and if the flatten form is selected and you select that project cuts added to forms option, you can have the cuts projected with the flatten pattern feature, and that little checkbox option, there it is right there, is in the options panel. So you have that as an option as well. There's a lot of enhancements, and we do have, if you find that you want or need more in-depth instruction or training, we have some core update courses from Creo 4.0. You can see there Creo 4.0 core update from Creo 2.0. That's an actual name of a class. And of course, Creo 4.0 core update from Creo 3.0, another class name. Mouthful, but you can see exactly why the name is what it is. It tells you exactly what you're getting. And we do offer these classes now, as well as dedicated Creo 4.0 training. We do have, if you'd like to take the traditional courses, the Introduction to Modeling, the Advanced Design, both part and assembly, there is a sheet metal course that is all in Creo 4.0, surfacing classes, all our core classes, drafting, our drawing class, design, documentation, and detailing are available. And if perhaps you're coming from another version of the software, say Wildfire, one of the Wildfire versions like Wildfire 4, for example, you are still able to get core update information. You just have to make us aware of your needs. We do have that training as well. It just didn't make it to the slide. Sorry about that. If you have any additional questions or any other comments, we can be reached by the site www.ran3d.com, or if it's training related specifically, training@ran.com. You can email your inquiry to that site, and of course there's a phone number, 877-726-3243, that we can be contacted at as well. So you've got all these avenues through which you can contact us for additional inquiries, or if you have questions, please do so. Thank you for attending the training. Have a pleasant day.